Hey you, subscribe.
Hello and welcome to another video. This time around we're going to look at how to make a really cool resonant tonal filter that you can apply to buses, your master mix, different instruments, and you can use it as a riser, a sweeper, all that kind of thing. So the tools we're going to need for this is an EQ8, a utility, and a glue compressor. As always, we use the glue compressor with soft clip turned on, just to stop anything from getting above 0 decibels. So the sound that we're going to be tonally sweeping is this. Just some drums, but let's get into it. So the first thing I want to do is with this EQ8, is I just want to set all of these to the bell curve filter types. And we're just going to use 4 for this. By the end of this video, you'll realise you can actually make this quite complex and use lots more bands and sort of change the staging and so on. But for now, we're just going to use these 4 bands. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to group this. That's Command G or Control G on Windows. Next, we're going to open the chains view, and we're going to create a new chain as well. So you should have 2 chains, one with an EQ8 and one that's empty. And the empty one, we're going to put this utility on it. And then we're going to invert the phase on this second chain. The main reason as we do this will become more apparent, but it's basically to make sure that only these 4 bands, when we've set them up, are coming through the mix. And to test that this is actually working, just play back your project. And if you hear sounds on the channel that you're affecting this on, then it isn't working. But if you're not, then it's cancelled itself out in phase. So as you can see, this phase inverted utility, both of the signals together are cancelling each other out because they're 180 degrees out of phase with each other. So this is where the cool bit starts to come in. So we're going to take these 4 bands and we're going to map these controls to some macros. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to map all of the frequencies to macro 1. We're going to map all of the gains to macro 2. And we're going to map all of the resonant cues to macro 3. And just to check that that's all working correctly, if we turn macro 2 up, all of the gains should move together. And with them up or down, we can also check that the cues, width is working, and then the frequencies as well. Now the issue we have right now is this is all just sat on one point. And if we play this back, and play around with the frequency, we've got an interesting sound so far, but it's not fully where we want this sound to go. So this is where we're going to have to go in and edit the frequency values. So we press the map button, and we find our 4 different frequencies, and we're going to offset these from each other. We're going to have an offset starting point and an offset finishing point. Now I find the finishing point quite easiest to do, and we're going to stagger these by 500 Hz and have the top one finish at 20 kHz. So if we just type those values in, so we've got 20, 19.5, 19, and 18.5. We don't want all of these to be the exact same value, because especially when we go into positive gain territory, it can get very, very loud and distorted and too resonant too quickly. So having these staggered points is quite cool. Now in the low end, this is where we have to do a little bit of trial and error. So I'm going to turn the macro 1 all the way down, and we will start to see in the EQ where these points are staggered to. So I'm going to set the first one to 30 Hz. And the first one is the one that peaks at 18.5 kHz. The second one I'm going to set to around 53. And we want to make sure that these points are sort of equally spaced from each other. Next we'll go to about 89 Hz. Okay, it's a little bit too close. Let's try 92. Again, try and make them as equally spaced as possible. Obviously visually, not actual frequency wise, because that's not technically equally spaced. And the fourth one, we'll try around 140 Hz. Okay, maybe a little bit further. Oh, not that far. A little bit further than that. So about 170 Hz. There we go. Well, maybe 165. Split the difference. Again, you can try different values with this, but these are the values that I've been starting with for this kind of filter. We can turn the map button off, and now we can play the music back. and see what this sounds like, and then sweep macro 1. Now we do have a slight issue that these are all going to the exact same point at the end, although it's very, very close. So what I'm going to have to do is stagger these out a little bit further. So let's just go back to the map and we'll space these out by 1 kilohertz each. So instead of 500 hertz each, so 18 kilohertz and 17. It's always good to remember the minimum lowest value should be the minimum maximum value as well. So if you start at 30 hertz for the first one, make that the lowest highest value. So 30 to 17, 53 to 18, 92 to, oh, didn't type that one in right, to 19 kilohertz, and 165 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And as we can see, we've just got a little bit of a better staggering right now. So let's listen to that again. And then if we flip the gains to positive, this is the reason why I have the glue compressor here as well, because this will start to get a little bit on the louder side. As you can hear, we're getting some really interesting tonalities. Obviously, the resonant Q is set to its highest or tightest band. But we can start messing around with that as well to get different tonalities. So if we draw in some automation just to sweep the filter. So I'm just taking that for macro 1. Obviously I can edit the name of that as well so we know what it is, which I will do that now. We just use Command R or Control R on Windows. I'm going to call this sweeper. Macro 2 we can call gain. Macro 3 we can call res width. And then if we just go back to the automation for the sweeper and duplicate that twice, now we can mess around with the gain and the resonant width values. As a side point, if you set the gain to 0 decibels, you will hear nothing because the EQ has stabilized itself. It's not adding or taking away. So if we set that value to 0, it is now being cancelled out by the out of phase utility. So this has to be positive or negative values. You can't be at 0. As you can see in here, the wider the res width bandwidth we get to, the more it starts to get into that crunchy and peaky territory. So a good thing to do is if you go back to the map and you find the resonance values, set them to a minimum of around 4. Because really anything lower than that, when you're getting into sort of 0.1 territory, the bandwidth is too wide, so it's not becoming a tonal filter anymore. It's just a sweeping bandwidth filter and not really what this is intended for. So like a low value of 4, as you can see, the peaks are separate enough that they're not going to start colliding with each other. Now a really cool thing is you can expand on this and start creating different types of tonal filters. And I've actually made 7 tonal filters that you can grab from my Patreon for a small price of $3. But here's one of them. This is a multi-stage tonal filter. And this allows us to go from 1 point all the way up to 8 points. As you can see here, I've got some different macros. And if we just apply some automation to the sweep macro, let's have a listen to what this one sounds like. And I've just loaded up this EQ here to show you what the frequency spectrum is doing as this is sweeping. If I turn the EQ stages all the way down, you'll see it's a lot tighter. So that's just 1 point coming through. And then that's all the way up to 8 points. You can also combine this kind of thing with many different effects. One of the last tonal filters that I created for the pack is this one that I've titled Arcade Machine, because it very much sounds like an old retro arcade games machine gallery. There's a few different combinations of effects behind this one that are all being controlled pretty much by this one dial, and a few other ones. As you can see, I could change sort of the time that the sort of colourful effect was happening for. I can change the texture, apply some delay to it as well. Again, from the other one, we've got the amount of EQ stages, so I can go from 1 point all the way to 8. So you can have a lot of fun doing this kind of thing. And one final filter that I can show you. This one I've called the UFO rain filter. Again, I'll just apply the automation to the sweep. So it has that old retro sci-fi sound to it. Increase the EQ stages as well. Something cool with this filter is got width to it, so it'll sweep up in the right, sweep down in the left. But again, if we just come back to the original filter, this is all just based on this filter that we've created here, by having the sweeper setting the frequency, minimum point and maximum point, allowing us to change the gain from minus to positive, and again the strength of the resonant width as well, so we can get either really colourful sounds or a little bit more balanced and wider sounds in the sense of how much the frequencies are being affected. If you want to grab the filters that I've done, I've also done a preview video of this that I uploaded last week. It's 7 tonal filters, all with different sounds, but based around this technique, but with some extra stuff where I've got like an echo filter that's tonal, a UFO rain filter, and the other filter that I showcased, a multi-stage one, and lots of fun filters. I wanted to create this kind of thing instead of just having a simple low pass or high pass, band pass, notch filter, that kind of thing. See how far we can take this and go into some different territory. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have fun with the techniques, experiment yourself. But until next time, as always, God bless and goodbye.